I absolutely love the Friday the 13th movies. They're easily my favorite slasher franchise of all time, but there's a little bit of a conundrum here. There's a conundrum because when I say I love the Friday the 13th movies, I usually mean that I love the Friday the 13th sequels, and when I say that I love the Friday the 13th sequels, I usually mean Friday the 13th parts 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. The back half of the catalog, and now there's like a bunch of different fans within the Friday the 13th fandom. There's the ones that simply prefer the first one for whatever sick reason. There's the fans that just like all the movies, including the first one and the New Line Cinema sequels. And then there are the fans that have a greater appreciation for the back half sequels of the original 8, which is where I fall into. I don't know why I'm more drawn to the later sequels. I think it's because they're actually like more entertaining movies. 1 to 3 were kind of figuring stuff out and not doing a great job of it, but then 4 changed how these sequels work. But you know what? We're not going to be talking about the movies that I actually like today, because why would I ever do anything nice for myself? Parts 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 will get their own individual reviews because I have a lot to say about those movies. Jason Takes Manhattan was actually the first video I ever did on here, and I deleted it because it was badly done, but anyway, the whole purpose of this video is I just want to get 1 to 3 out of the way today. I don't have really a lot to say about them because I don't like them. I don't feel like each one warrants an extended review of its own, so I'm just gonna kind of cram them all into this video, say that they suck, and we can get on our way. Sean S. Cunningham was inspired by a dream he had when he came up with the first Friday the 13th. Oh, fuck it, let's not even lie here. We're not gonna dance around this. The first Friday the 13th was developed on the coattails of Halloween's success, with Sean S. Cunningham coming up with the concept and working with Victor Miller, who had a similar concept, and bam. It's basically just Halloween, but in the forest. There's a bunch of 1970s college-age kids that are helping put a fucking campsite back together. And the campsite itself has a backstory of 2 fucking unsolved murders before the start of the film's events, and yeah. Real fucking riveting material they got for us here.
Like when you look at Friday the 13th Part 1. It's pretty tame by today's standards.
Like, the problem with the first Friday the 13th movie that I see immediately is that it has 70s stink. Now, 70s stink is what I say in regards to a movie that uses that old grade film, where it just looks like fucking crispy and kind of like they're focusing on the warm elements of the picture. But it's about more than that. It's not just how the movie looks. Like, that plays a big part into why I would label it 70s stink, but it also is how the movie plays out. A lot of the cheaper 70s movies have this acting dynamic where it feels like you're watching a play. Like, they're not really acting, they're more so just reading their lines. And yeah, I get it, it's a slasher movie, it's not an acting masterclass, whatever you'd fucking call it, but they make no attempt to act naturally. It just feels like a bunch of fucking college kids, like, reading off a script, like, badly.
Ta-da!
Are you crazy? I don't believe you!
You know, you're beautiful when you're angry, sweetheart.
I wonder why none of these actors ever went anywhere after these movies, save for a few. Friday the 13th has 70s stink despite being released in 1980, and yeah, it was probably shot in 79, but to make it short, this movie fucking stinks. There's very little upside to the first Friday the 13th, like Tom Savini's effects are pretty good, but you'd literally have to pay Tom Savini to do a bad job on purpose to get him to do a bad job, so there's nothing to really write home about here. He did better work in movies before this, he did better work in movies after this, and he's done better work in the Friday the 13th franchise. Basic premise of Friday the 13th, as many may know, is there's a bunch of killings at this campsite called Camp Crystal Lake, as well as a water poisoning incident leading to many in the small town of Crystal Lake to believe that the camp is haunted.
It's got a death curse!
But it doesn't actually have a death curse. We later find out that some woman's disabled kid died there due to negligence, and she went crazy and made sure the camp never reopened. Like, I really don't have anything to talk about with the first Friday the 13th. It just kind of fucking sucks. Like, there's a few okay kills, but again, that's Tom Savini. You can see better Tom Savini work elsewhere. And honestly, Tom Savini must have been a little too expensive because they only really have him do, like, 4 kills, 3 of which are actually solid, and one of which is like one of those cheap ones where you see the fucking weapon swing, and then it cuts to the result, and then like all the other deaths in this movie are fucking off screen. And I think the one thing I hate the most about like any slasher film is when they do like off screen deaths. Like 1 or 2 is okay. This movie has like 4 off-screen deaths, which is just so fucking cheap. I'd honestly rather they have like on-screen deaths that aren't that extravagant than have off-screen deaths, because it's like, use your imagination. It's like, bro, I'm watching a movie, I'm not reading a fucking book.
It's pretty tame by today's standards.
I don't want it to seem like my base complaint with the movie is the fact that there isn't enough death on screen, because it goes far beyond that. Maybe I've been spoiled by the sequels, I don't know. And before somebody comes in here and is like, well, they have to build suspense and all that. Yeah, well, if they're building suspense, where's the payoff? There's like little to no payoff. It's just like these fucking people wandering around on the camera doing nothing, and we're waiting for something to happen. And then when something finally does happen, most of the time it's just horribly disappointing, and it's like, you ever edge for too long? When you go beyond the sweet spot and you just kind of like blurp everything out and it doesn't feel like anything? That's Friday the 13th Part 1. And I could be more forgiving of how the violence in this movie is kept to a minimum if the rest of the movie was actually enjoyable, but there's so many other problems with Friday the 13th Part 1.
When you look at Friday the 13th Part 1, it's pretty tame by today's standards.
The movie is slow, the movie's boring, the characters aren't likable, the performances are bad, and there's no real good set pieces. It's just like, eh. Like, Kevin Bacon is here in an early role, and that's kind of interesting, and his death is actually one of the better deaths in the movie, but in all honesty, like, I love the franchise, I cannot fucking sit through this slog of a movie. If you looked up the word slog, it may be described as a noun, meaning hard, persistent work, or a prolonged, arduous task or effort, or a hard, dogged march or journey, which, like, that describes this movie. It's literally work to sit through this fucking piece of crap. The only actor in here who's putting on anything resembling a performance as opposed to just reading their lines is Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees. Like, yeah, Kevin Bacon's there, and I do like Kevin Bacon as an actor, but I'm not going to pretend this is like a powerhouse Kevin Bacon performance. This is more of a, I just started my acting career and needed a job and something on a resume performance. Like, he doesn't do very much here. I'm glad he got, like, paid, and I'm glad he got to go, like, to a lake for a week, and he probably fucked one of the female actresses, but, like, there's nothing, Kevin Bacon brings nothing to the table here. Nobody brings anything to the fucking table here besides Betsy Palmer. So yeah, there's the whole thing with the woman's son drowning. We find out that Mrs. Voorhees has been doing the killings because her son drowned, and Betsy Palmer puts on this decent act as a crazy woman.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her. Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason. I won't.
She really gets into the role, and it's very clear that she's like old school Hollywood, because like she started acting in the 50s, she worked on Broadway. It feels out of place, but because she's so damn good at it, it makes it somewhat entertaining to a degree. Betsy Palmer is truly a professional actor because like she didn't want to do this movie. She read the script and said it was shit, but she needed the money for a new car, so she showed up and she showed out. But all in all, besides the few positives, like Friday the 13th Part 1 is hot shit, but hold the hot, because hot implies that there's something to be enjoyed here, and there's really nothing to be enjoyed here. This movie's fucking garbage. I hate this movie. It's so boring. Nothing happens. It's like Sleepaway Camp, but without the creative kills, and nobody whips their dick out at the end. Like, even the finale where Mrs. Voorhees and Alice are fighting, while moderately entertaining at times because they were both actually hitting each other, goes on for way too long and falls into like slapstick territory. It gets to the point where it's like it keeps going and it's funny, and then it just stops being funny. Sure, the scene of Mrs. Voorhees getting decapitated looks pretty good, but it's not worth sitting through this slog of a movie. Even people who praise the ending jump scare where Alice, the final girl, dreams that Jason jumps out of the lake and grabs her, it's not as good as people remember it. Certainly not as good as the jump scare at the end of 3, and like on bigger TVs now, you can see the fucking little stick that was attached to the actor's head poking up behind the boat for like a solid few seconds before the jump scare happens. Sean Cunningham has not been shy about saying that he made this movie movie purely for profit, and it was a success. It followed on the coattails of Halloween 100%, and it worked out. Now, the thing is, with all the Friday the 13th movies, the original 8, is Paramount distributed the movies, but they were 100% independently produced. Even still, it's still pretty astounding what this movie did at the box office. It made $58 million against its $550,000 budget. It's also noteworthy that Friday the 13th Part 1 actually knocked Empire Strikes Back off its #1 box office spot after Empire had been in that spot for like 17 weeks straight or whatever, and they like to talk about this like this is some big achievement for the movie, and I guess in a sense it is, but at like 17 weeks, I'm pretty sure everybody who was going to see Empire Strikes Back had already seen it multiple times, so literally anything could have knocked it off #1. I have like one memory of the first Friday the 13th movie from when I was young, so like I started kind of getting back into horror movies in high school. I got into them initially when Freddy vs. Jason was coming out, but I kind of just lost interest. I remember going to Game Center on Yonge Street, and they had the rare DVD box set, which I still have to this day. It looks like it's been chewed up and spat out, but I still have it. And I saw the box set there, it was $60. I'm like, okay, I need to get this. I need to have all these movies, because I was going through them again. And now, I had never seen Friday the 13th Part 1 prior to this, and I didn't expect much. I expected it to be kind of slower. I knew the twist. But like, I went to my buddy's house. We were all like, we're all seated. We're gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna watch some Friday the 13th movies tonight. And we decided to start in order. And Friday the 13th Part 1 was so fucking boring that like, we got halfway through it, took it out, and we like played fucking Xbox or something. I think to date, I've only watched this fucking piece of dog shit front to back once in my life, and I never want to watch this garbage again. Now, obviously, because the first Friday the 13th turned a profit, it turned it into a very attractive venture in terms of franchising and sequels, and everybody involved wanted more. Sean S. Cunningham wouldn't return for the sequel. Instead, one of his frequent collaborators, Steve Miner, would take the reins as director with a script written by Ron Kurz. Victor Miller would still be credited as the creator of the concept, but from that point on, Sean S. Cunningham wouldn't return to the series until the 1990s, and every subsequent Friday the 13th movie just had a different crew behind them, including directors and writers. Now, initially, the idea for the Friday the 13th series was to turn it into an anthology format of horror stories based on the Friday the 13th superstition, but yeah, that never fucking pans out, like, ever. Now, the ending of the first Friday the 13th movie did sort of cliffhanger Jason as a possible main antagonist, so it was pretty much set in stone that Jason would be the killer in a proposed sequel, which leads to a bit of a convoluted backstory, to say the least. So the implication at the end of the first one is that Alice is attacked by some sort of apparition of Jason in the water, whether it was within her dream or if it was some lake spirit is whatever, but like that's not important right now. Because the Jason we see in part 2 is very much a full-grown ass man.
The boy. Is he dead too?
We didn't find any boy.
Then he's still there.
Now, originally Adrienne King was going to return as Alice in a leading role for the sequel, but there's a few different conflicting reports. There's one rumor that says she opted out of it because she had a stalker who showed up to her house with a gun. Some guy who was like obsessed with her from the first movie, and that made her want to quit acting, but the other story I've heard was actually from Adrienne King herself in the Crystal Lake Memories documentary, in which she states she did not return due to a pay/script dispute. Either one of those explanations makes perfect sense, but the fact is, bitch shows up at the start of the movie, dies, and she's never mentioned again. Now, from a larger scope, the big problem with Friday the 13th Part 2 is that it's mostly a retread of the overall concept of the first one, but it's a little bit remedied by the fact that it is a lot better done. While it is a lot better done than the first one, it doesn't necessarily mean I like Part 2. I don't like any of these three outside of maybe a few scenes or elements that I find to be enjoyable. The only thing good about Part 2 is the fact that Jason shows up in this one, having apparently witnessed his mother's death at the end of the first one. I thought he drowned and he was in the lake, so it's like, I guess the implication here is that he was just kind of hanging around in the woods after his drowning. Like, did they look for him for like a fucking hour and just call it quits? Like, did they not find the kid?
Jason should have been watched every minute. He wasn't a very good swimmer.
Like, if no body turns up for a missing child, typically you're gonna look a little bit longer than a fucking hour. Like, Mrs. Voorhees goes crazy and blames everybody else for this, but it's like, bitch, you fucking didn't do anything. You contributed nothing to solving this, and then you just went crazy and fucking started killing everybody. Like, your child fell into a fucking lake. Granted, it is a lake that somehow can get you to Manhattan, but the way I look at it is like, you are a mother, you have a special needs child, that is a responsibility. If your special needs child gets lost, you don't just fucking look for an hour and call it quits. You get your ass out there and you find that fucking kid. Like, they did expand on this a little bit in the Friday the 13th game, but the canonicity of that is debatable at best. I have my own theories on Jason's existence that I'll probably get to, like, more into the Friday the 13th reviews, not this one. Friday the 13th Part 2 looks a lot better than the first one, like, the film grade is a little bit better. Maybe it's because they had better lighting or whatever, but it doesn't look as fucking crunchy. To add to that, the acting is a little bit more polished all around, but the main issue here is the plot is kind of weak. And again, I get it, it's a slasher film. But like, when you look at it, the characters are still cardboard cutouts with the sole exception of that weird guy from that X-Files episode. It still has the pacing issue of the first one. Like, you're sitting through an hour of practically nothing happening. And yeah, they add some kills like kind of early on to kind of pad it out, but it's really not worth it. It's like, there's nothing happening here. And I get that suspense needs to be built, but they need to get to the part where they actually build the suspense. There's no suspense being built, it's just fucking more awkward shit. The main character and final girl for Friday the 13th Part 2 is Ginny, a psychology student who seems to be extra fascinated by the whole concept that Jason is still out there.
What if there is a Jason?
Oh, bullshit. Jenny?
No, what if there is some kind of boy or beast running around Camp Crystal Lake? I mean, let's try to think beyond the legend, put it in real terms.
But other than that, she's much like all the other characters in this movie, boring as shit. While the characters are boring, Part 2 does kind of start the convention the Friday the 13th movies had of having the kind of quirky and interesting side characters. Like, conceptually they're interesting, not so much in execution because the whole movie's kind of boring. But like, it's kind of in line with the future sequels, but it's not as prominent. Like, you have all these college-age camp counselors in training that have some identifiable personality or physical traits. But the sad thing is, they all kind of suffer from the stink. The only characters from this movie I can really name besides the main ones are Mark, who's the guy in the wheelchair, and Vicky, who's the chick who wants to bang the guy in the wheelchair. And Sandra, and that's only because Sandra has a tie to a character in a much better Friday the 13th movie. Otherwise, you can kind of just chalk everybody up to like a vague description of what their character is. Like, you got the girl with the nice ass, you got the pervert, you have the girl with the dog, who is also actually the girl with the nice ass, and then you have Crazy Ralph, who shows up to get killed. It's really not enough to justify me sitting through about 45 minutes of nothing really happening to get to the fucking payoff. Like, sure, it has the campfire scene, which is like one of the most identifiable and iconic moments in the franchise.
Thanks much.
I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason. His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned.
And sure, Jason does make his first appearance cosplaying the killer from the town that dreaded sundown, but at the end of the day, aside from some okay kills that mostly got cut down for the release, there's nothing really to offer here. Like, yeah, sure, the uncut kills are available as a fucking special feature now, but it's like, that's not enough to make me want to watch this fucking movie again. Sure, the double stab death is pretty good, even if it was done better in another movie, but like, what am I watching? What am I doing here? What's the prerogative? I think that's the overall issue with 2, is that compared to every Friday the 13th movie that came after it, it's relatively tame.
Pretty tame by today's standards.
It's a lot of quick cuts and facial expressions and cutaways, and it doesn't really get to the meat of most of the kills. And that is an issue that plagues the slasher genre, especially this franchise, that the MPAA censorship fucked with it, but 2 doesn't have anything in it that really counteracts that makes it worth watching. Like 7, that movie got butchered to shit, but the ending chase scene is so awesome that it's like you can kind of forgive it just a little bit. Personally, I think the best death in Friday the 13th Part 2 is when Mark, the wheelchair guy, gets killed. Like, that's a genuinely creative kill, and maybe the first genuinely creative kill in the franchise. And there's a funny story that goes along with this too. My dad loves to tell this story. So my dad was in the dumb kid classes in high school, like not the special ed, just like the kind of dumb and otherwise not diagnosed with anything class. And one of those classes was was basically like on Fridays they'd just watch movies all day, and somebody would always bring in a slasher movie. Somebody brought in the Friday the 13th movies, and they just watched those on Fridays instead of doing schoolwork because they were dumb. But anyway, to get to the point here, apparently there was this like really old woman who was like a teacher's assistant in the class. She was probably like in her 60s or 70s or something, and she sat in the class while they watched Friday the 13th Part 2, and when Mark gets killed, she was apparently startled so badly that she went into hysterics and had to be taken out of the class by the vice principal, and she was never seen again. I always found that story really funny, and I don't know why. I think it's just because of my general disdain for teachers that I had as a kid. Maybe I pictured like one of my older teachers having like a mental breakdown from seeing something like this, but like you gotta think about it like on a deeper level. Like this woman was in her 70s, so it was likely she was born like just before the 20s, because my dad went to high school when in the mid 80s. The scariest thing this woman had probably seen in a movie up to that point is like a 1930s Universal monster movie, like maybe Psycho at the most. So there's just something inherently funny about like the idea of an old person being like mentally destroyed by this scene. She had probably simply never seen anything like this on screen before, and it probably felt real to her, and it like just freaked her the fuck out. What's even funnier though is like, you know, this movie's not really that intense. Like, I say that, oh, compared to later movies, it's pretty tame. Now, even like compared to movies that came out in 1981, it's pretty fucking tame. Keep in mind, 1981 is the same year that Maniac and the Prowler were released. Now, I've seen a lot of dick writers say that 2 has the best climax, and honestly, I don't see it. It's actually kind of shitty. It's dark, nothing happens, it's just Ginny running around. And, like, the actress who played Ginny, Amy Steele, was actually running. Like, she was apparently fucking either, like, way too into her role or thought that Steve Dash was legitimately trying to kill her, because a couple times, like, while they were shooting this, she, like, kept running and wouldn't stop, and, like, she outran the camera crew, and it caused problems. I honestly think I'd be a little bit more forgiving of this chase scene if the lighting budget was better, because yeah, no, like, I have the exposure turned up to try and, like, kind of mitigate that, and it just isn't working. The chase scene is just way too dark. And it kind of goes on and on and on. But then she tricks Jason by pretending to be his mother. Like, the fucking head that Jason has doesn't even look like Betsy Palmer, so did you just find another head? Is that even his mother's head? I actually kind of just hate this so much, because, like, I don't know, like, Jason's supposed to be a little bit dumb and he misses his mom or whatever, but he knows that she's dead. He has her fucking decapitated head on a shrine here. And it really varies from movie to movie how mentally challenged he is. Like, in some depictions he's just like deformed and a little weird, but is otherwise pretty smart when it comes to killing people. But then for some reason this movie decided to just have him be like retarded, and yeah, sure, early installment weirdness, but like I never really liked the depiction of Jason being mentally challenged. I think like, yeah, maybe he was a little slow and deformed, but he's also like too effective at killing to be considered full-on mentally challenged. And yeah, his mother pretty much implies that he is mentally challenged in the first movie. They kind of downplay that as the series moves forward.
I mean, what would he be like today? Some kind of out-of-control psychopath? A frightened retard?
The only thing of any note here is that they did actually get Betsy Palmer back, and the footage was actually shot by Wes Craven, giving him the rare distinction of having worked on both a Friday the 13th movie and a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. But yeah, I don't know, they whack him with a machete and then they get attacked by the second worst Jason design ever. Initially, Tom Savini was asked to return to design Jason, but he was working on the movie Midnight, and then they tried for Stan Winston, who also said no. So they got this other guy who made the dumb fucking long-haired Jason design where he looks like a killer Rocky Dennis. Now, Jason was played by 2 different actors in this movie. Steve Dash, who portrayed Jason when he was masked up and in action, and Warrington Gillette for the unmasked parts. And this is like a very early interpretation, so I'm not going to judge it too much, but it's like, it's not particularly great. He runs around a lot, he is imposing, but he's not that big. The next movie would be the first one to portray Jason as like hulking, so like they didn't really quite have it nailed yet. Like, sure, he's intimidating, but that's because he's a murderer. Like, any murderer can be somewhat intimidating, but he's not like fucking huge. He's not like, oh shit yet. And the design is not very good. I don't like fucking burlap sack Jason. Like, having him look like the fucking Elephant Man isn't scary, nor is it cool looking. And I mean, I don't like the long hair either. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Warrington Gillette or Steve Dash. They did what they did, but Jason just kind of stinks in this movie. Part 2, again, is just like, it's a movie I'd never really volunteer to watch. I didn't rewatch it for this review. I know I'm not going to have a different fucking opinion on it by the end of it. It's better than the first one, but that's not saying much. That's like saying, yeah, man, it's better to get a gun shoved up my ass than down my mouth. Like, honestly, the only compliment I can give this movie is that it looks better than the first one and the third one. Like, the grade of film they used was a little better, but there's no compliments here. It's very, like, low average at best. There are a few fun facts to this movie. One of them is that Marta Kober, the girl who played Sandra, lied about her age to be in this movie. She said she was an adult when in reality she was like 16, and she shot a nude sex scene that almost made it into the movie. Fortunately, somebody caught on to the fact that she was underage, and they basically destroyed the footage and cut down the love scene like as much as humanly possible. The actress who played Vicky was also underage and lied about it. Fortunately, she didn't shoot any nude scenes, but she did shoot a scene of her changing, which in a recent documentary, I think it was Crystal Lake Memories, she said she probably should have had her mom sign off on something. I think there's a funny story where Vicky had a huge crush on the guy who played Mark, which kind of added a little bit of authenticity to the scenes of Vicky trying to seduce Mark, but the problem there was that actor Tom McBride, who played Mark, was a homosexual and had no interest in Vicky. Sadly, Tom McBride would die of complications from AIDS a few years later. Like, looking at part 2, it's certainly a step in the right direction for what made the series so great moving forward, but the movie itself just, like, isn't that great. It didn't really nail the landing yet. I can imagine it was probably a good time in the theater, but when you have the back half of the series available to you, you're likely to pick those every time. Friday the 13th Part 2 made $21 million against its $1.2 million budget, so while it wasn't as profitable as the first one, it still cost next to nothing to make, and it brought back 20 times its budget, which basically meant, hey, let's keep this ball rolling and make another sequel. About a year later, Steve Miner was brought back to direct a third and proposed final Friday the 13th film, which ended up being Friday the 13th Part 3 or Part 3D because they shot this movie in 3D. In some respects, Part 3 feels like a step backwards for the series, but it also does start a few new conventions that would be carried on throughout the series. For one, Jason finally gets his signature hockey mask, and they finally nailed how to do a proper climax with the final girl. And this time, more of the characters are at least identifiable and have unique traits. Something that would be perfected in the next movie, but would be improved upon compared to 2 in this movie. So you must be thinking, hey, he said some positive things about Part 3, he must actually like it. I mean, I kind of don't like it, but I also kind of like it at the same time, if that makes any sense. There's a lot of reasons I don't like the movie that I'm going to get into, but I think one reason why I'm going to be a little bit easier on this one is because of nostalgia. I have a lot of good memories associated with watching this movie, and it kind of makes me look back on it a little more fondly, even though I wouldn't consider it anywhere near the quality of the back half sequels. In my Fright Night review, I made a reference to the time me and a friend borrowed my friend Adam's Blockbuster card back when Blockbuster was doing free rentals. We rented Fright Night and we rented this, and then we ended up not returning them, and his parents ended up having to pay all this money. But besides that, like, there are some positive memories to this movie, and as a result, I don't quite hate it. But I do hate certain things about it. Again, my biggest problem with Friday the 13th Part 3 is that it still does have that lingering 70s stink. The characters, the way the movie looks, and the overall setting, it just doesn't really feel like the 80s. All three of these movies were made in the early 80s, and I have mentioned previously that every decade does take a few years to come into its own. It has that runoff from the previous decade and how it looks. So for example, in Friday the 13th Part 3, one of the characters is a hippie, and all the clothes look like something out of a 1970s Sears catalog. There are two characters in this movie who are of note. One is Shelly, the fat prankster who tries to scare everyone with his special effects, and the other is Chris, the final girl. All the other characters are shit and not really worth talking about. You got the hippie, you have his stoner girlfriend, you got girl woman, guy man, and Latin American stereotype played by a goddamn white woman with a tan. Which, fun fact, the actress who played Vera Vera would appear in Weekend at Bernie's with another Friday the 13th actor. That is Terry Kaiser, who played Dr. Cruz in Part 7. And I have to bring up fucking Rick, who's like Chris's love interest, but he looks like he's in his mid-30s. Now, I know the kids in this are a little older than what you would expect. I think they're supposed to be like college age, maybe mid-20s, but like still. I think the biggest saving grace for Part 3 is that Jason finally kind of feels like the Jason character. That is, until it's revealed that he raped the final girl in the past. Jason being a rape hound is something that never comes up again in the series after this movie, and for good reason, because that's fucking stupid. So instead of the camp setting, Part 3 has Jason roving around Crystal Lake, now inexplicably looking like SoCal instead of the East Coast. The implication for parts 2, 3, and 4 is that the movies take place over a connecting period of time. It's a killing spree that takes place over the course of a couple days. A lot of fans like to think that part 2 takes place on Friday the 13th, part 3 takes place on the Saturday, and part 4 takes place on the Sunday, but more likely I'd say that the events of all 3 movies take place like inside of a week and a half at the most. Jason has ventured forth from his shanty house and has gone on an adventure, which leads to him killing a store owner played by sitcom actors Stephen Robert Susskind and his wife. I think like something that's like unintentionally hilarious about this movie, it's just something I find to be funny in general, is that since the movie was shot for 3D, there's a lot of those pointless 3D shots. So like when you're watching this movie not in 3D, because not every re-release of this movie was in 3D, you get these stupid fucking like where they're just literally trying to get something into the camera to make the 3D effect work. 3D is just one of those trends that comes and goes, like it comes back, it goes away, it comes back again, and like yeah, you just have to deal with it every couple years. It just kind of comes off as silly when you watch like a movie that was shot for 3D, like not in 3D. Like there's no reason that Crazy Ralph's cousin should be running around with an eyeball. So this is like everyone's like summer trip. I'm guessing a bunch of college kids or whatever. Like Shelly's trying to bang Vera and he's making an ass of himself. A bunch of shit happens to develop the characters. And it feels like the acting is kind of just regressed back into the whole people just reading lines outside of a few characters. I will say that Chris is okay and Shelly kind of puts on a performance here. But like really besides Chris, Shelly, and maybe Vera, like none of the characters really matter and they don't act like they matter.
Stop fooling around, man.
There's like bikers for some reason that Shelly gets into an issue with, and one of them looks like John Moxley. And fun fact, the two bikers, Fox and Ali, are the first named black characters in the Friday the 13th franchise. It only took 3 movies. So 3 carries on the steps that 2 took by having slightly identifiable characters, but 3 actually took another step in the process too. Friday the 13th Part 3 is really the first in the series to have creative death scenes. While Part 2 did get a little creative with its death scenes, I would say Part 3 was the first one that really nailed it. 3 takes it up to actual creative levels, something that the Friday the 13th series would become known for. For example, Guy Man walks around doing handstand all the time, so naturally when he gets killed, he gets chopped down with a machete from the crotch down. We see the character Shelly fucking around with a harpoon gun, so yeah, let's get that in Vera's face.
Hey, now cut that out right now. That's not funny.
There's a hot fire poker sitting there turning all red. Let's get the stoner girl stabbed with it. You know, some solid deaths in this movie. That is, until the deaths aren't so solid. So like when the movie doesn't go out of its way to be creative, or when it has to play to the stupid 3D gimmick, it gets kind of lame. I always hate when a slasher movie has a fucking death where somebody gets electrocuted. That just feels so cheap to me. But that's not even the worst death in this movie. So about the midway point, Chris and Rick go out. They have a heart-to-heart where Chris admits that she was assaulted when she was younger by Jason, and during that time that's when all the side characters get bumped off and they return and they're like, okay, where is everybody?
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Wait, are you trying to tell me everybody's dead?
Should have never let him out in the first place.
Chris is wandering around and then Rick gets killed, and my god. Like, who okayed this? Who saw this effect and said, yeah, that'll fucking do. We're good, bro. This is a good kill. Pass me the fucking blow. Like, it's bad enough the head gimmick looks fucking, like, so fake, but, like, when the eyeball comes out, you can see the goddamn wire. They made, like, no effort to mask the effect here. Now, I think part 3 excels with its climax, because Chris really does, you know, take it to Jason. I would argue this is one of the best final chase scenes in a Friday the 13th movie, because it's not one-sided. Like, Chris is throwing everything at this guy. She truly gives him the business. Even when the car doesn't work because the bikers took the gas out earlier, she just gets right back into the fight. She stabs him, she fucking runs and jumps out a window, she fucking hangs him, and then the one biker guy who we thought was dead comes back to save the day, and then he actually dies. But this allows Chris enough time to whack Jason in the head with an axe. And I actually love how, like, they try to fake you out one more time. You're like, oh my god, that didn't work either. Like, this is top tier. And the ending of part 3 is just straight up fucking sadistic. So part 1 ended with Alice in a hospital bed, but otherwise okay. Part 2 ended on a weird cliffhanger because at one point they did plan to have Ginny return as the lead for a sequel. Yeah, prior to this idea, the idea for the third Friday the 13th would have had Ginny at the hospital, and it would have been pretty much just a rip-off of Halloween 2. So after Chris finishes off Jason, she gets into a boat and passes out, only to wake up the next day to see Jason is still there, looking at her through the window, and this shot is creepy as shit. Now, of course, this is a hallucination, but then it ends with something that genuinely took me by surprise when Jason's zombie mother comes out of the water and grabs Chris. And the effect they did for, like, Jason's zombie mother looks so good. Like, she's got the worm hanging out of her face. It's genuinely fucking disturbing. Of course, this all just kind of goes back to reality, where we see that it was just a dream, and we have the cops arriving, and Chris is just, like, mentally scarred from this ordeal. The last we ever see of the Chris Higgins character is her being hauled off by the police, screaming and crying and laughing hysterically. This is like totally a downer ending because, like, while she did get Jason and survive, it's very clear that she's just, like, fucked for life now. Friday the 13th Part 3 made $36 million against its $2.2 million budget, so once again, while it didn't make as much as the first one, it did improve on the second one's box office and did leave room open for sequels. It's the first movie where Jason gets his iconic hockey mask. It seems like they nailed the general demeanor of Jason down besides the whole sexual assault thing, like he's hulking, like Richard Brooker is one of the better Jasons, but 3 still feels like it's kind of finding itself. Like, I would argue that among the first 3 movies, Part 3 definitely seems like the prototype for what the series would become. Didn't quite figure it out yet, but it's probably out of those 3 the closest to it. And you're probably asking, what movie would the series find itself in? Well, that would be Part 4, which I'm going to get to next time. In general, I'm stricken between which one I like better between 2 and 3. It's hard to choose which movie you dislike less when it comes to 2 movies you don't really like. I think in different ways, each movie kind of has elements of what made 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 so good, but it's just not quite there yet. They do have aspects that I like, but I think I would have to pick 3 over 2 just for the final chase scene and just for the disco theme. Yeah, the opening of Friday the 13th Part 3 has this fucking disco theme called Hot Ice that just slaps so hard. Like, nothing with 3 really resonated with me compared to, like, the good sequels, but that theme fucking slaps. In general, I just don't like these early Friday the 13th sequels, and it kind of just confuses me that there are people who prefer these to the later ones. And it's kind of sad to me that the direction the series is going to take moving forward is more so based on these movies, specifically the first one, with the Friday the 13th prequel series choosing to focus on Mrs. Voorhees. It's very clear that Sean Cunningham, who would take control of the series after Part 8, has a general clear dislike of the sequels. Because, like, bro, the first movie is ass. Parts 1 to 3 are just like stink tier slasher films in a series that otherwise is genuinely entertaining. I cannot sit through Part 1, and yeah, I can watch Parts 2 and 3, I just rarely choose to do so. Like, honestly, if given the choice between these 3, I would pick 3 pretty much every time, but if I was given the choice between, like, watching all 3 of these and the back half half sequels, like, I'm gonna pick the back half sequels 10 out of 10 times. There are certain little things I do appreciate about the early Friday the 13th movies, even part 1 to some degree. I generally do feel spoiled because, like, I kind of get it. If you, like, grew up when these movies were coming out, like, you're obviously gonna have a different attachment to different sequels. My generation and the generation after my generation could really pick and choose with these, and yeah, you're gonna pick the newer ones. In short, why would I ever watch those 3 when I can pick the other 4 or 5? I may have been a little bit harsh on 1 and 2, but it's like I said, like, I never voluntarily watched those movies. 3, okay, I said earlier I didn't really rewatch any of these. I kind of went back to 3, and, like, it did kind of improve my opinion on it a bit. That's only because, like I said, 3 is, like, the prototype for what the good sequels would become. Nevertheless, like, if you've never seen the Friday the 13th movies, like, I suggest just going through all of them because, like, there's a little bit of lore, not really, but there is. And then you can be the judge for yourself which one you like better. But if you have already seen these movies and you're around my age, chances are you probably have a similar opinion to myself on which ones are better. To be completely honest, I wanted to get these 3 movies out of the way so that I could say I did it, so I could move on to the movies I actually like. Like, I really don't have anything to say aside from what I said here about parts 1, 2, and 3. If it were up to me, I would have started with part 4, but then people would be like, oh, do 1, 2, and 3. So here you go. That's all you get. It's just me kind of complaining and shitting on these movies. While parts 1, 2, and 3 do have moments that I like, in general, they just have this stink to them, and I'll acknowledge that the ones that I actually like wouldn't exist without these, and there are a few things to be enjoyed within these, well, 2 of these. I still think the first one is shit, but, like, there's really nothing worth going back to here. These 3 early Friday the 13th movies fucking stink, but I admittedly have a soft spot for 3. Final fucking verdict. So that was my kind of start with my Friday the 13th series retrospective. I got the crappy ones out of the way, and I'm gonna do 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 way more in depth than this. So I'll probably see you on the next Friday the 13th. Like, subscribe, and happy Friday the 13th.
Did I hear you screaming?
Oh, it's probably Debbie having an orgasm. How come you never scream when we have sex?
Give me something to scream about.